Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to a new episode of History and Gaming Alexandria. This is Mike, your host, and today I'll talk a bit about a great scenario for Chain of Command that I put on for Alexandria's D-Day Normandy Commemoration event, which is a fantastic event that's run in Old Town Alexandria every year. So we'll talk a bit about that and talk about wargaming and running historical war games for the public and reflections on this awesome scenario as well. And our scenario was one that I developed for Chain of Command, and we ran it for your hobby place out of Old Town Alexandria at the event. And this is a very cool scenario called a Recce after D-Day, which pits Fallschirmjäger or German airborne units backed by a Wirbelwind anti-aircraft tank against British and Commonwealth reconnaissance teams, as well as French resistance fighters. But more on that later, as we'll break down the scenario in detail and talk more about it. The event itself is put on by the Sister City Commission between Cannes in France and Alexandria, and the committee puts on this fantastic event annually. I've attended in the past as well. They've also had historical war games in the past, and this time we ran our scenario for your hobby place. The event also involves a lot of great activities for families and kids. It's free to the public. There's music, including a swing band, dancing, period displays, and reenactors, which you'll see in some of the images here, as well as vehicles such as Willis Jeeps. I think three or four of them that drove up to the event, and other historical displays, tables, and food from local businesses, some book-related events, and other activities for kids and families as well, including, of course, historical wargaming, which is what we were there to do, and we had a blast doing it. And so we'll talk through our scenario a bit. As I said, it was for Chain of Command, which, in case anyone is unaware, is a fantastic rule set for World War II and even interwar, and perhaps even slightly post World War II, small unit and skirmish actions by Two Fat Lardies. It's one of my personal favorite historical games. I think it brings a lot of nuance and a lot of period flavor in a non competition style format. It's very narrative, it's very historical, and very nuanced, which is why I really enjoy it. And we had some truly great players and participation at this event. A lot of young people, in particular, becoming very interested in history and the artwork behind setting up these games. And the scenario itself was designed to be simple but compelling and draw people in a way that anyone could come by the table and jump into the game, basically hop in and play and take a side. And we'll talk about a recce after D-Day, which pitted the British Reconnaissance Corps alongside French resistance fighters against the German airborne or Fallschirmjäger. And with that said, we'll move on to the order of battle and discuss what troops were participating in this game. Here you can see the British forces. These consist of two armored cars, which activate as their own junior leaders, as well as an infantry section with a senior leader, including a Bren gunner, and a grenadier as the weapons teams. There's also an aircraft that the British player could use at his option or her option when they reach 6 chain of command points on their command dice. Alternatively, on reaching 6 chain of command points, the British Commonwealth player could activate a junior leader of a French resistance squad hidden in the forest along the long side of the table. And on to the Germans. The Fallschirmjäger are led by a junior leader who's in charge of 2 rifle sections as well as 2 automatic riflemen who activate as part of the rifle team. Now, they also have weapons teams of their own, and we'll talk about those a bit later as they're concealed using a unique card and scouting system that I developed for this scenario with hidden cards. And there is a Panzerschreck team, basically a portable handheld anti-tank weapon like a bazooka team, as well as a sniper hidden in the buildings on the tabletop. And the German player, upon reaching 6 chain of command points, does have the option of bringing on the Wirbelwind anti-tank, anti-aircraft tank, which can do a lot of damage and fire at units on the ground, and also reduce the effects of any airstrike called in by the British player um, whenever he or she reaches their 6 chain of command points, which was a great mechanic and a great interplay between the flak tank and the Wirbelwind and the British aircraft, giving both the German and the British player some opportunities to counteract each other there, which proved to be quite add some interesting drama into the game. And of course, another element that brought a lot of drama to this scenario as well was the presence of the French resistance fighters. Pour ne pas oublier les Français, les habitants, les locaux. Du coup, ce jeu bien se déroule en France, so we don't want to forget about the French, the locals here, and the French Resistance Squad, or FFI, les Forces Françaises de l'Intérieur, which were the local resistance fighters in the area, consisted in this scenario anyway of a number of submachine gunners led by a junior leader, armed with an SMG himself. He is wearing the beret, as well as weapons teams, including a light mortar team, as well as a female sniper. And this little band of French resistance fighters really packed a punch and served as an effective force multiplier for the British and Commonwealth forces in this scenario. And as we noted, the French deployed on a mobile jumping off point, which is like a deployment point in chain of command. And we used the commemorative French coin or medallion from Charolais, Beauvary, the monument or memorial to the French resistance fighters in this game. And that allowed them to deploy anywhere along the forest, running along the edge of the table, where the British and Commonwealth player decided to place them upon reaching 6 chain of command points on his or her dice, which was a really cool effect in the game, particularly if the Commonwealth player, as it turned out in our scenario, ended up pursuing the route along the woods as opposed to trying to push through the small town along the road at the other edge of the table. So it creates that interesting, those alternative choices of which way to go, which way to probe forward, in this scenario and pursue the objectives. So before we move forward, I'll just note that we did not use the force morale system from Chain of Command in this game. We relied exclusively on real objectives and targets that the Recce forces had to achieve, and these involved scouting locations for landmines, which were hidden throughout the table, particularly along the road, blocking their path, as well as reaching the overall objective, which was to reach the other side of the table, to essentially clear the Germans from this town or bypass them and make it off the road at the other side. And so that was the objective. That was what the British reconnaissance units were looking to do, and it was the job of the Fallschirmjäger, both the ones hidden in the town, the two weapons teams, Panzerschreck and Sniper team, as well as the junior leader and his contingent to stop that from happening. So we did not use the force morale system here. It was strictly military-based objectives, which made it very compelling, very, very interesting, very task-driven, and in my opinion, a really cool, fun scenario to play. So let's take a look at some of the tokens that I was talking about. Basically, and most importantly, we had 3 Fallschirmjäger deployment points. There's one main jumping off point, but there are 3 Fallschirmjäger logos, laminated pieces that I made that are used as blanks, essentially. 2 of them say Achtung Minen on them, or warning, mines, landmines, and the other one is blank. And so the German player will place these face down anywhere he wants on the table in order to block the advance of the British Recce vehicles. Now, in this case, they elected to put 2 of them down on the road, and then 1 of them down in the clearing between the ruined building structure adjacent to the forest, and the other buildings, the long barn and the garage, which has a neat little interwar era car hidden inside of it. And in any case, those three mine tokens with the one blank were placed face down, so the allied player did not know which was blank, which was landmines, and the recce cars had to go forward and scout them. The way scouting worked in this scenario was any individually based figure, there's a scout figure, could be released, costing one activation point by a leader, and would have to roll a 4 or higher, so 4, 5, or a 6, in order to overturn the card and scout it successfully. This proved to be a bit difficult for the Commonwealth player in this game, and it was frustrating for him to actually uncover those cards, and at which point he just elected to go around through the woods. They eventually found two of the landmines were placed along the road, and the clearing had a blank. Now that could be any different variety of placement depending on what the German player wants to do. The other cards, tokens that were used, were three miniature playing cards. And again, there's one blank or joker. There was a number 2 card, which concealed the German sniper. And there was a king or a queen card, which concealed the Panzerschreck team. And the Fallschirmjäger player at the beginning of the game got to spread these 3 cards and place them in any cover, basically, any area of the table, any building or light cover position. There was also a chicken coop structure, the garage, the long barn, the ruined building, where he chose. And again, the allied player would not know where they were. And so as the Fallschirmjäger player moved forward, and as the British moved forward, the same scouting rules applied. With the exception that if the British failed to scout the sniper or the Panzerschreck team, the Fallschirmjäger player defender could spend 3 chain of command points off of his dice to uncover and activate one of the units, and then you use them going forward, and they would activate on a 1 like any weapons team in chain of command. So very interesting dynamic for Fog of War, really portraying the stress of the reconnaissance duties and really moving into an area where you, as the allied player, don't know what to expect, don't know where the enemy is, don't know where the landmines may or may not be, and have to move forward like a real reconnaissance team, which was very cool. Now, I'll also note that in addition to the commemorative French coin, which served as the resistance fighters' deployment point or jumping off point, we also had a few other period items on the table. We had a 1941 Commonwealth helmet with the camouflage netting that you'll see there. That's original, part of my collection, as well as a British compass and its leather case. I think it's a Mark II compass dated 1939, which is very cool and allowed players and other people passing by to kind of see and take a look at real period items from the 40s that would have been relevant in this game. We also had a great book on the history of the British Reconnaissance Corps, or Recce Corps at war, called Only the Enemy in Front and Every Other Beggar Behind, which is a fantastic resource on anything to do with the Recce Corps in World War II. So I had that out on the table for people to peruse if they so chose, and it's an excellent resource. So a lot of interesting period stuff in addition to the game itself going on, and people enjoyed that, I found. So the scenario itself played fast. People were able to jump into the game. We had great participation, and in addition to, one young player taking on their British Recce Corps, I played the Fallschirmjäger to start out with before another player took over. Another person joined the game, and then we had 2 or 3 playing, with one taking command of the Wirbelwind once that came on, and the Germans had reached 6 chain of command points. Now, as I mentioned in our game, the British Recce Force had a very difficult time rolling dice to scout the mine locations, and the player was pretty hesitant about pursuing a path down the main road. And so they actually focused on scouting the hidden unit cards and found the Panzerschreck team deployed far out in the ruined building right in front of the British infantry squad, part of the Recce team. And so they focused on clearing them out of the ruined building, which they did in about a turn and a half or so, and put enough shock on them to drive them out of the ruin. put the Bren gunner in there, and then using fire and maneuver tactics, which Chain of Command is a great system for illustrating, they were able to move forward, move the armored cars skirting through the clearing. But upon the Commonwealth reaching 6 chain of command points, they were able to activate, in lieu of an airstrike, they activated the French resistance fighters, who then moved forward from the forest, put an SMG gunner by the chicken coop building, and really laid down mortar fire and sniper fire with the French resistance weapons teams, which was very effective and pushed the Fallschirmjäger on the back foot a bit. As the Germans reached 6 chain of command points, they brought on the Wirbelwind with its heavy anti-aircraft cannon and light machine gun, and they were able also to put shock on the French resistance squad, pushing them back and creating more of a space for themselves to push back against the British. However, again, the Brits reached 6 chain of command points. They also used their armored cars to some effect. And really, using fire and maneuver tactics, they pushed the Germans gradually back. So, all in all, it was a really seesaw, back and forth, dramatic game with both sides having their advantage and both players, really all the players, being able to take advantage of what the chain of command dice allowed them to do. And it really demonstrated the stress and unpredictability of reconnaissance operations under a fog of war situation, facing landmines with uncertain locations and hidden units, weapons teams. So the Fallschirmjäger troops here proved to be a really tough nut to crack. But now some reflections on wargaming in public. Obviously, this was not a hobby-related, hobby-centric event. It was a public event, a historical commemorative event for Normandy and Operation Overlord and the liberation of France, put on by the Sister City Committee of Caen and Alexandria. And so wargaming for the public was rewarding. I got a lot of great questions about the hobby, a lot of great participation in the game, and really hands-on questions about how to play Chain of Command, but also questions about where to buy the game. And of course, being sort of brand ambassador for your hobby place that day was particularly fun and interesting to talk about how you can buy figures and put terrain together, and you really create the game yourself. It's not a game that you go out and buy in a box in one place, for instance, but it's really your game and your scenario that you build yourself. And that is a novel concept, but a very positive concept for a lot of people who are really interested in what is historical wargaming and how do you do it. And I was able to explain that and show people how it works, which was a lot of fun. And the response was really great and really positive for a game like Chain of Command, which is, again, not a tournament style game. It's not about winning or losing as such. It would never be the kind of game you would play in some sort of competitive tournament, but it's very much focused on the history. It's very much focused on the nuanced reality behind the tactics of the day and how to portray that on the tabletop in a way that's cooperative. And even though it's competitive between the players, there's going to be a winner and a loser, and there's going to be competitive play. It's really about the story. It's about the narrative and how that narrative relates to what commanders really faced in the moment in the 40s. And so that's really an exciting thing to bring to the public. It's something that people enjoyed, and I think it just brought an extra sense of period flavor to this event, which really benefited from having historical wargaming present. And it's something that we'll definitely do in the future, definitely do a wargaming in the park type of event where people could come out and roll dice and see miniatures and play games like Chain of Command, which is my personal favorite, but other systems that focus on the history and the narrative, Sharp Practice, for instance, and there are so many other examples. But bringing Chain of Command to the Normandy event in Alexandria was a lot of fun, and we'll look to do it again next year as well. Again, this is an annual event in Alexandria, and I'll leave you with some final images and music from our D-Day memorial in Old Town.